Hi guys. So now today we're going to take finding the slope and the rate of change a step further, and we're going to incorporate it into the equation of a line known as slope-intercept form that I highlighted here for you. This is something I'm sure you guys have worked with before. We've actually worked with it together in our class, y equals mx plus b. Okay, and that's called the slope-intercept form of a line. And the different letters stand for different things, okay? So I identified here that the m is going to be our slope of the line. So everything that we've worked with up until this point, so change in y over change in x, the rise over run, all that good stuff, that's going to be our m value in the equation, or the slope. All right, the b part, okay, that plus b at the end, the b is going to stand for the y-intercept. All right, and that y-intercept is going to be where x equals 0. All right, on our graph, it's where it crosses the y-intercept. All right, in a table, it's where x equals 0. And that'll start to make more sense as we go through and do some practice problems. All right, but I just want to make sure that you guys are familiar with y equals mx plus b and what m and what b stand for. So let's go through and start off with some basic identification problems. So in this first example here, if I gave you the equation y equals negative 2x minus 3. So right now that is in slope-intercept form, okay? It's y equals mx plus b. It is in that form. And we are asked to identify the slope and the y-intercept. So again, we talked about our slope being this m value. All right, so our m value in our equation is going to be negative 2. It's that value in front of the x. We don't include the x with that, okay? The m is just the coefficient out in front, so that would be negative 2. Okay, the b value is going to be what comes after. All right, so in this case, our b is going to be negative 3. All right, the sign in front matters. So because it's minus 3, our b value is negative 3. So don't forget to include that sign. Okay, and that's how you identify the slope and the y-intercept. So let's try a few more. All right. And number 1, all right, again, they ask you to find the slope and the y-intercept. So our slope is that value in front of the x, which is negative 2. So m is equal to negative 2. Okay, our b value, or our y-intercept, is the value that's added or subtracted after the x. All right, and in this case, it's going to be positive 7. So b equals 7. And number 2, okay, again, that m value is out in front of the x. We do not include the x with it. So m is equal to positive 6. And our b value, or our y-intercept, is positive 11. So b equals 11. Number 3, okay, our m, again, is that value out in front of the x. So m equals negative 7. And our b value, or our y-intercept, is negative 8. So b is equal to negative 8. Again, the sign matters. We want to carry that negative down in our answer here. All right, number 4, don't be intimidated because there's decimals. Okay, the same idea is going to apply. So my m value is negative 2.5. Decimals are okay. They're a part of math. Okay, and my b value is going to be 3.2. Now, number 5 looks a little bit different, okay? I don't have an x term here. Notice that in front of this negative 9, there is no x. Okay, so some would think that there is no slope, right? However, if we think about it a little bit further, okay, if there is no x term, what would cancel out an x term? Well, 0 times anything would cancel out an x term. So this is really saying 0x minus 9. Which means that our m is actually 0. All right, so whenever you don't have an x term, Okay, it's actually because our slope is 0 and it just canceled out that x term. All right, so don't be confused by that. Whenever there's not an x term, your slope is just 0. All right, and our b value would still be that number out behind the x term, which is -9. Okay. Now I want you to try number 6 on your own. Okay, so number 6 is going to be a problem that you're going to complete on your own in Edpuzzle. All right, and I want you to give that a try and identify for me what the m value is and what the y-intercept value is. It is okay that there are fractions, okay? And let's move on. Okay, so now we need to write an equation in slope-intercept given a slope and given a y-intercept. So I'm just going to write at the top to remind us what our slope-intercept is. Y equals mx plus b. This m value here is going to be our slope. All right, and this b value out here is going to be our y-intercept. So now we're given our values and we need to plug it into our equation. So in this first example here, it asks us to write an equation for a line with a slope of 2/3 and a y-intercept of 9. So I take my slope, I take my y-intercept, and I input it into my equation. So my m is 2/3x. My y-intercept is 9 plus 9. So my equation in slope-intercept is y equals 2/3x plus 9. Same thing for the next couple examples. So in number 7, it tells me my m is -5 and my b is -6. So again, I plug it right into slope-intercept. It becomes y equals -5x minus 6. All right, so if that b value is negative, we want to bring that negative down. So our equation is -6 at the end. So y equals -5x minus 6. Number 8. All right, my m, or my slope is 1. So y equals 1x. B is -4 minus 4. Done. Nice and easy. Okay, we're going to skip 9. All right, and we're going to go on to number 10 because number 9 you're actually going to do on your own. Again, in Edpuzzle for number 9. All right, but I do want to go over number 10. So number 10 tells us we have a slope of 0, right? So if I were to plug that in, it would look like y equals 0x plus 3. Now remember, previously, when our 0, okay, our slope is 0, it actually just cancels out that x term, right? So my equation, just like number 5 up here, is actually just going to be y equals 3. All right, whenever you have a slope of 0, we don't technically have to write it, it just cancels out, and our equation ends up just being y equals 3. Okay? All right, so now we've worked with writing the equation, okay, identifying values and writing the equation. Now we're going to work a little bit with graphing equations in slope-intercept. All right, so I'm sure you guys have done this before, but we're just going to review quickly here. Okay, so when I graph an equation in slope-intercept form, for example, y equals 3/4x plus 2. Okay, one trick is that this y-intercept out here is always going to be our starting point. Okay, and we talked about to start the notes that our y-intercept is where the line crosses the y-axis. Remember, our y-axis here is our vertical axis. Okay, so if my intercept is +2, I want to find +2 on that y-axis, and that is my starting point for my line. Okay, so again, you always start with your b value on the y-axis. Now, in order to create my line, I need to use my slope to create more points. So remember, if my slope is 3/4, we know that our slope is change in y over change in x, or our rise over our run. So if I have 3 over 4, this means that I could travel up 3 and right 4. So from our starting point, I can count 1, 2, 3 up and 1, 2, 3, 4 to the right. Okay, that's another point on my line. Now, I could also travel in the opposite direction to extend the line out to the left. Okay, so if my slope is 3 over 4, instead of going up 3 and right 4, I could also go down 3 and left 4. Right? Because that would be negative over negative, which still ends up giving me a positive 3 over 4. And let's see what that looks like on our graph. I could go down 3 and left 4. Notice how that still extends my line out in a straight direction to the left and to the right. All right, and I graph my line. Let's try another one. So let's look at number 2. Again, I'm given an equation in slope-intercept form, so I always want to start at this b value. B value is my starting point. Here you notice it's negative. That matters. Okay, on my y-axis, I want to go down to negative 4. This is my starting point. Now my slope is negative 3. So in order to incorporate the idea of rise over run, sometimes it's easier to put our slope in fraction form. So if it's a whole number, we know that we can just write whole numbers over 1. So that means that my slope is negative 3 over 1, which is my rise over run, which means I'm going down 3 and right 1. Now, notice on my graph here, if I were to go down 3 and right 1, I kind of have to estimate it there. So that means that I really shouldn't extend that line out any further to the right. I should try to extend it up and to the left. So I could switch my values here. I could have 3 over negative 1, which means I go up 3 and left 1. Notice how I'll be going in the same direction. Up 3, left 1. Up 3, left 1. Up 3, left 1. All right, so I just want you guys to feel comfortable with extending out our lines in both directions. Okay, and then when you do graph, you want to make sure that you connect your lines just like I did, connect your points, and with arrows on both ends of your graph. Okay, because lines do extend in opposite directions forever. So you want to make sure you indicate that using arrows. Okay, last part of graphing here. Now we're going to work backwards. So we're given the line, and they ask us to write an equation in slope-intercept form. So if we look at number 11, okay, we know that our two values that we need in slope-intercept are our m and our b value. Remember that our m is our slope and our b is our y-intercept. So for me, I like to start with that y-intercept because I could just look at my vertical axis and kind of highlight where that line crosses. Well, it crosses at 1, so my y-intercept would be positive 1. Now I want to figure out my slope. So remember that your slope is your rise over your run. So if I were to highlight another point on this graph up here, okay, for the past couple days, we've worked with counting rise over run. So that means I went up 2 and right 1. So my slope would be positive 2 over 1. Okay, now that we've identified our 2 points, we want to use those to write an equation. So I'm going to plug in my m, which is 2 over 1. Okay, you could just write 2 if you want. I'm going to keep it as 2 over 1 x. And then my b value is 1, so plus 1. So the equation of my line would be 2 over 1 x. All right, now let's try number 12. So again, we want to start at that y-intercept where it crosses the y-axis. That's going to be my b value.